Great. Awesome. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the information session for the Theater of Change, Reimagining Justice Through Abolition. My name is Leah Squillace. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Associate Director of Curriculum for Broadway Advocacy Coalition, and I'll be co-teaching this course with a number of incredible people. For folks who prefer visual descriptors, I will be turning on captioning as soon as I can figure out how to, which usually I can, so I don't know. Oh, there we go. Okay. So you should be able to see the live transcripts now if you choose to use those. I'm also a younger looking white female with brown, very stringy hair right now, wearing a blue collared shirt. And if those visual descriptors help you to know who's speaking, please feel free to let us know in the chat, along with any other access needs you may have. We're happy to accommodate those to make sure that everyone can get the most out of this hour. I'm going to pass it to Drew, who will also be with us today, and then there'll be two other BAC folks jumping in with us in a little bit.
What's good, everybody? My name is Drew Drake. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am fortunate enough to be one of the facilitators this year, but I also was a past member of Theater of Change. So I'm super excited to be here with you all. I am a Black man with braids, brown skin, and have a burgundy shirt on for anybody who needs any visual needs as well, too. And yeah, I'm just super excited. It's going to be a dope session right here.
Thanks, Drew. And we're going to have two other BAC folks popping in with us later, so we'll have them describe themselves, introduce themselves when they get here. But for now, we want to start with just a little taste of how BAC does our work. If some of you may be really familiar, some of you we may be completely new to. So we like to say that whenever we get together in space, we're trying to create some micro spaces of justice. We're trying to make the world that we want to see, no matter what we're doing together. And one of the things that we really care about in the world that we want to see is taking time, not only to get to know each other, but also to just be here in our bodies, to listen to our bodies, to take care of ourselves. So we're going to do a moment of centering and breathing. During that time, I invite you to introduce yourself in the chat if you want to list any access needs if you have any, and to just breathe with us and start off the way that we like to here at BAC. So I'm going to invite you to put your feet on the ground. Do whatever feels best for your body. I like to sit up straight. Maybe if I'm in a chair, push my back against the back of the chair so I can feel my spine on it. Plant my feet on the ground so I can feel the earth. And I'm going to put my hand on a part of my body that needs a little extra love today. For me, that's my lower back. And I'm going to breathe in on 5. I'm going to breathe on that 5. I'm going to breathe in my intention for this time together. What am I really going to center and focus on during this hour? And my count out of 5, I'm going to focus on what I want to offer to everyone else in this space. So I invite you to think about an intention and an offering as we breathe in together on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold it. And out on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I want us to do that one more time. And as you breathe in, I want you to breathe the air into your hand that's touching the spot that needs some love. And on your exhale, let out a sound with that, whatever you're feeling, whatever you need. Maybe it's or maybe it's a song or a note, whatever it is, let that sound out. You're on mute. No one will know. All right, so I invite you to breathe in on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let out with sound 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And slowly open your eyes when you feel ready. Awesome. Thank you all for taking a second to do that with us. Okay. So our dear friend Drea just got here. She's doing double duty right now. So Drea, whenever you feel ready, flip on your camera and we'll introduce you, and no rush there. But folks, our intention for today is to, yeah, thanks, Drew. You can drop your name and your pronouns in the chat. So our intention for today is to talk just a little bit about this course, the Theater of Change, give you some background, what we're looking for from applications, a little bit of what we'll offer you, and then we'll open it up to questions, and that's going to be our hour. So Drew, I know I originally had this reversed, but I wonder if you might want to start off with a little testimony. So Drew was a participant last year, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his experience with Theater of Change.
Yeah, I'll definitely jump on in there. So Theater Change was an amazing experience. And really, it was super powerful to have Columbia Law School students, along with theater artists and community organizers, community members, and even some folks who were and also even some incarcerated community as well too, be in the space together and working together. One key thing that really stuck out to me at Theater Change is this idea about proximity. And we really started off in the beginning talking about Brian Stevenson and this idea of the folks who are closest to the problems are actually folks who are closest to the solutions. And so allowing ourselves to really be in conversation together about how can we all come together to work towards change, and really asking ourselves, what is this thing called abolition, right? And for myself, it was such an interesting conversation because as a theater artist, as someone who works as a teaching artist in a bunch of correctional facilities here in New York State, I never really took time to think of myself before this class of thinking about abolition, right? I oftentimes have thought of like, myself wanting to make change, but on a personal level. And in this course, it really allowed me time. What's good, Drea? It allowed me time to really sit with the idea of what is abolition and really how can we reimagine what this world can look like, and especially reimagine a world without this prison industrial complex and this prison system. And so that was super powerful. And so I was really blessed and fortunate enough to have some great facilitators in my space, in my particular circle, particular group. So I had Drea, I also had the amazing Alejo, I had some law students, Dala, had some amazing folks, Nicole, Adam, and we were able to, and Andreas, I can't even forget, so I'm forgetting folks as well too. And we were able to sit together and be in conversation about what are all our own relationships to the imprisonment industrial complex. And that was such a powerful conversation. And from it, we were able to, one, hear each other and like really do this thing of like active listening. And what does that mean to like really hold space and hear the stories of how we all kind of show up in relationship to this thing. And from it, we were able to really centralize like the idea of, for us, thinking about, we were focusing on parole, and really this idea of, which one of our members, Andres, had brought in of, the idea of how when someone in our community and our family is incarcerated, it can feel like we all are incarcerated. And that was such a powerful like conversation that we were able to like really sit with, alongside the experiences of folks like Luis and Alejo, who actually was able to talk about their own experiences being incarcerated. And so from it, we just were able to really put all these experiences together and create such a powerful project in the end. And we did this through these Zoom virtual streets right here. But we were able to really tell a really beautiful picture. So I was just super excited. And from there, I feel like there was such amazing relationships that went past that fellowship. During the summer, I was fortunate enough to do a project at Lincoln Center with Alejo, really focusing on abolition. And it was amazing to know that this work that we created, one, in Theater Change, it was just the seed, and the seed began to keep growing past this whole course. So that's a little testimony, a little snapshot for me, and I'm gonna pass it back to Leah.
Thanks, Drew. So let me do this. How do I don't know. Y'all, I'm sorry with Zoom. Okay, there we go. Now you can see me. Before I go any further, Drea, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, I'm Drea. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Bringing greetings from the Lenape-Hoking and Cedar Territory. I am a light-skinned Black woman. I'm wearing a Black bandana, some cheap-ass earrings, and a blue tracksuit. That's me.
Thanks, Drea. So, and Drea, only if you want to, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but is there anything you want to throw in about Theater of Change last year and your experience with it?
Yeah. So last year was my second year in the Theater of Change. The first year was 2019 at J-Term at Columbia Law School, which was our last in-person gathering for Theater of Change, and also like solidified my need to work at BAC. I got to hear Alejo speak, and one of the stories he shared was he, had been incarcerated for about 30 years. And he told the story of when he was released, he was riding the train and this baby started crying and a dog started barking, and it brought him to tears. And he just realized like how isolated he was from the world. And that story like really shook me, because I started thinking about all of the things that are so quote unquote normal that I take them for granted, and how important I think this work is, and how stories like Alejo's I've been using as like anchors for my work and for this coursework. And then last year I had the privilege of kicking it with Drew for a whole semester, who's like the homie now. And so to that point, I would just say that like the community building aspect of Theater of Change is dope. And you get to find new artists that you want to put in your back pocket and meet new friends. And I think after being locked inside for a year, maybe I should just speak for myself, but I was a little desperate for human connection and to meet new people and to build a Rolodex of people that I admire and whose work I love. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Drea. So I'm going to give a little bit more of a broad overview of what even is Theater of Change, what is this course, how did it come to be? And then we'll talk a little bit about kind of what you can expect from it and what we ask of our participants. So this is our fourth year teaching the Theater of Change. So as Drea mentioned, historically, the course has been a J-term week-long course. And then last year was the first year we did it as a full semester-long course, which was virtual. This will be our first year doing it both in person and a full semester. So we're really excited for the possibility that that presents for community building, as well as developing projects over a sustained period of time. This course is co-developed between the Broadway Advocacy Coalition and the Center for Institutional and Social Change at Columbia Law School, which is directed by Professor Susan Sturm, who is one of the professors of the course. And it's evolved over the past 4 years, but has centered around this same core methodology of bringing together three groups of people who are artists by nature, who really center their artistry in the way they move about the world, people who are in training to be policymakers, so law students in this case, people who really think about systems and how they interconnect, and then people who are directly impacted by whatever our focus is. So we've historically focused on abolition and criminal justice reform and the school to prison pipeline. So when we say directly impacted, we oftentimes mean folks who are formerly incarcerated or systems impacted themselves. You all, by virtue of being on this call, are likely to apply as artists. And I just want to say that that doesn't limit your participation to only showing up as an artist. For example, right, I have a family member who's incarcerated, and that informs the way that I move about the world. So I absolutely show up as an artist and someone who has knowledge of these systems. We also have law students who've come from artistic careers. We have people cross over a lot, and we're excited by that. And when people apply as one of those three categories, we're just saying that we really need you to bring those skills, because we recognize that there's a magic that happens when all three of those skill sets and experiences come together in one place. So why are we doing this course, and why are we doing it now? This is our second year focusing on the theme of reimagining justice through abolition. And we're focusing on that theme again because it's so expansive. It allows us to cover a lot of different topics. And I think last year, far more people than had historically realized that the criminal legal system is perhaps beyond the point of reform. We're at a point where reforms are oftentimes really upholding a lot of the systems that are causing these harms, or in many cases are designed to create the harms that they're addressing. So we are focusing on justice, achieving justice through a lens of abolition. What that means is that when you join the course, you'll spend a number of weeks doing some co-learning where artist participants will teach about storytelling, where folks with direct experience will talk about the criminal legal system, and we'll all build our knowledge together. And then we'll split out into project groups. There will be 5 different project groups, and these are going to focus on different topic areas. You heard Drew and Drea say that the last year they worked on parole. We'll be working on another project around parole this year. We'll be working on a project around reframing narratives of violence and how is violence committed and why is violence committed. We'll be working on a project of legal education, and then we're still solidifying the last 2 projects for this year. But based on your preferences, you'll be sorted out into groups, and then with your smaller cohort, that's a mix of all 3 skill sets, we're going to go into building those projects out. So I think one of the best ways that I found to think about theater of change is that it's both, like Drew said, a seed. It's a place where you can form relationships, build skills that you can take afterward, but it also is an incubator for specific projects that can then live on, that intend to have a really concrete life, a piece of artistry that is connected to some sort of strategy for making change. And those we will develop within the course. So just a highlight of some of the skills that you'll develop, we're going to learn about these issues that we're focusing on through the stories of those with direct experience. We'll spend some time dissecting the policy landscape of those issues and looking at existing campaigns that are working on addressing those, pushing policies toward justice. We're going to think about how arts can be strategically employed. So obviously, as artists, we all know that there's a power inherent in artistry, but how can we even more strategically employ that so that these projects can amplify ongoing campaigns? Then we'll collectively create performance pieces with these engagement strategies, and then we'll strategize where do we go from there. The course culminates in a shareback session where we present these ideas, and then we intend for them to have a life living on. So you almost think of that final of the course as the proof of concept for each project. That's a very high level overview. So last thing I'll say, and then I'm going to hand it back to Drew about some of what we expect from participants in the course, is that, as I mentioned, this is a semester-long course that will be meeting in person. We meet primarily at Columbia Law School, and when you meet with your project groups, they'll sometimes meet offsite, maybe in a rehearsal studio, maybe in your borough that you're working in. But the majority of the course sessions will take place at Columbia Law School on Monday nights from 6:15 to 8:15, and this will run from January 24th to April 25th. I just want to emphasize that because we're working in project groups, participation is really critical. And I don't mean just participation of showing up, but I mean letting us know what you need to be able to show up fully. So attendance is as important as communication for what it will take to make it possible for you to really show up. That's my more dry version of what this is. But Drew, I'm going to pass it back to you to talk a little bit about what we expect from participants in the course.
Dope. Thank you for that, Leah. So in thinking about expectations for participants, one, I think one of the things that we immediately look at is like, we're not looking for a skill set, but a personality, an openness, and a commitment, right? So really thinking about, if we're showing up in this space, how do we really build community? And we build community by being open and really inviting that commitment to be there. Um, and then another portion of like how we build community is by actively listening. Now, like actively listening, I feel like that could be so many, it could be taken so many different ways, right? But I think for us, really thinking about listening with one, like not trying to disengage as we're listening, right? Like, how do we fully be present and fully show up for someone as they're telling maybe these intimate stories, maybe these personal stories? And really, I think is the value of each other in community, of like really allowing ourselves to be present and be centered and really inviting this person to have the space to speak. So we're really inviting you to actively listen. And there's going to be a lot of stories and a lot of conversations that we have. So just knowing the preciousness of it, but also like for someone to share, it also takes some work, right? And so we don't want to invalidate somebody by telling their story. So we just want to actively listen. Another thing that we want to focus on is like curiosity about issues. And like not just curiosity because like, oh, we told you this is the thing that's coming up, but like curiosity on your own part. For me, like that was a great example of that was when we began to talk about parole, right? And really for me, I had never really sat and took time to think about parole as a whole. And it made me want to think about like, well, when was parole started? How was it started, right? And I think those type of questions, those always trying to challenge the status quo, asking the deeper questions, those are so helpful as we do this work together. And also thinking about that genuine curiosity is a want to engage and deal with race and racism, right? Like these are two things that we must be able to, one, be in conversation about, but we don't want to stray away from it because these things really live in so many different ways in the core of when we think about prison industrial complex. I think as well too, a desire to be held accountable in new ways. Who are you accountable to? That is a hard question that sometimes we don't want to take time to really think about. But oftentimes for me, in thinking about accountability, it's really one, thinking about this community that I'm building here, right? And really wanting to make sure that I show up in a way that I want to make sure that I am holding myself accountable to Leah. I'm holding myself accountable to Drea, right? And of course, allowing yourself as we are building this theater of change, this community, how are we holding ourselves as a community together? Everyone that's in this space, right? And then lastly, an interest in understanding how the legal system engages with race, right? Now, and thinking about that interest, right? A lot of us, for me, I was definitely not no law student. You know, policy is not my ministry. That wasn't for me. But I think also as I showed up in this space, I also began to realize that there's so much of an artistry that happens even for law students. There's so much of an artistry that happens even for community members, and understanding and appreciating where someone else is coming from in their interests, right? And so for me, it was able to really sit with like policies and who makes these policies. And as an artist, how can I begin to shift my work to discuss uh, who has the power and the authority in making some of these policies that affect us, and how does race impact with these policies that are made, right? So that's another thing that we often want to bring in, and that ties in for me with that curiosity, sorry. And then lastly, thinking about an openness to tell your story in a way that includes and not excludes, right? So how are we allowing ourselves time to show up and telling the story that isn't hurting someone, isn't allowing someone to feel like they're not wanted in this conversation. It's this idea of like letting go, you know, of the isms that we oftentimes deal with in the world, and making sure this is a space that we're not trying to navigate into those isms. We're really trying our best to allow ourselves to take those things out. We also think about an eagerness to participate and collaborate with energy. Yo, we here working together for some time, and I think participation and collaboration is some of our most powerful skills, right? I think for me and my group, having the opportunity to work with Drea, work with Alejo, work with Luis, and really seeing the ways in which we can collaborate together. I can hear your experiences, you can hear my experiences, and how can we allow ourselves time to sit and think about the ways that these experiences have some similarities? How do they intersect? What are the differences in these similarities, right? And that all comes with participation. We got to be present. We got to be here. We also have to have a commitment to the work and your group members by showing up to all the sessions. And as artists, we know the value of just being present and showing up. So this is one that can seem real simple, but like if you really, really lean into it, it is such a powerful skill of just being present and showing up. It's a commitment, and we are committing ourselves to each other as a community as well. And then lastly, thinking about an ongoing commitment to this work at the conclusion of the course. So when it's done, it's not really done. You know what I mean? It's like, it's the end, of course, with the course, but the work has just begun. And so thinking about what are ways that we can continue some of this work. There was such amazing projects that were brought up last year. And these were projects that were my group and some other groups. And I was like amazed of seeing how the ways in which people were bringing those projects and really using this space as an incubator to take it outside into the community. So again, as we end, it is really just the seed planting and we just started. So, and then lastly, the last thing that I want to leave y'all with is we are expecting folks to have a sense of play. Come in here with a sense of play, but also a sense of joy. How do we lean into these hard conversations and lean into it with joy? And that's a hard tool, but I was appreciative of folks like Drea in this space, you know what I mean? And really centering joy as a tool and a tactic, right? And so joy is essential, and joy is going to be essential to our work that we're doing together. And that's something we're expecting from all of us, not only just participants, but also for us facilitating as well. So these are just some of the expectations that we're expecting from y'all. It's not all of them, but some of them. And I'm gonna pass this back to Drea, I think.
So we also have a commitment to transparency. And so we want to be very transparent right now about our values. Something I've been thinking about is when you're not a match with someone's values, it feels like you're continually subverting your sense of self and your capacity for joy. And when it comes to this work, do we really want that for ourselves or for these stories and these communities that we're serving? And so we just want to make sure our values align with your values so that we can create better values for our ecosystems, our tiny ecosystems. Great. We are building a community where people who are directly affected are at the center. In BAC, we are constantly striving to find a balance between taking space, the space you deserve, and relinquishing space so others can have the space they need as well. It's a give and take. It's hard for us over here in the West, learning how to do that, putting my own caveats to a lot of this, but that's the whole point. I think it's really hard for us to understand of when we need to step back and when we need to step forward, just because we've been many of us have been conditioned to take up as much space as you want to without consequences. And some of us have been conditioned to not take up space, even though we deserve it. And so we're trying to find that balance always. Capacity building to share power. We believe that we can have the most impact by facilitating, supporting, and connecting others and using the arts for impact rather than placing our organization at the center of change work. We believe in power with, not power over individuals. We have a willingness to confront hard issues and conversations, a little bit of what Drew talked about before. In order to achieve change, we seek to work humbly within spaces and with methodologies that reflect a willingness to confront hard issues, including those involving race and power. Also to say, if at any point, anybody who is speaking too fast, I realize that I'm kind of speaking a little too quickly, which is to the thing of taking up space. I'm trying to plow through this to not take up as much space. So I'm just gonna slow down. And if you need anybody to slow down as they're speaking, you can just put it in the chat, yo, can y'all slow down? Y'all are really steamrolling ahead, and we will do that. Language matters. We believe that language is a powerful tool and must be wielded with care. Labels matter. Words reflect the realities we seek to change. We believe that changing language changes lives. Bringing your full self to the work. We recognize that too often people are asked to bring only parts of themselves into most spaces. We believe that the only way to make change is allowing for everyone's full humanity and complexity to be active and engaged. And one of the ways in which we do that, which I think BAC is uniquely positioned to do that, is we understand that this work can very often feel transactional. And so it's very important that we start with a community check-in or a community breath or a moment of levity or a game or what you eaten tonight, something that really taps into human to human relationships before we get into the work. And I only expound on that point because I think it is my favorite value. Like, I think if we commit to that value only, then we hit all of them just by a byproduct of bringing our full selves to the work, and knowing that in bringing your full self, that like that vulnerability can still be called in, out, through, under, over, whatever feels like it's not tone policing for whatever you want to label that as. So those are our values. I hope they align with you. Yeah, great. And I'm gonna pass it over to Nina to talk about something that I value a lot, which is, take it away, Nina.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nina. My pronouns are she, they, and I work directly with the Artisan Fellowship, which is really exciting, especially after everything that we talked about today. So the Artisan Fellowship is another opportunity to engage with Theater of Change's methodology, but while working on a specific project that you have in mind, a project of your choice. Essentially, it's a 4-month commitment that enables artivists to work directly with mentors and blend artistry, law, policy, community engagement, and produce narratives with powerful policy impact in spaces where changes can happen. So it's a 4-month commitment. I think I said that, between January 2022 and May 2022. And throughout this process, fellows will work directly with community members to amplify their stories, which will be informed by legal and policy research. Ultimately, it will culminate in the final showcase presented digitally on May 7th. And I can drop the specific dates so everyone has a clear view of the time commitment in the chat. Here we go. Okay, great. Okay, so the benefits as a fellow, because we love these. The benefits are as follows. So you get financial and production support. That is a $4,000 stipend, and then $2,000 project stipend. For your project, mentorship, and then community and education workshops throughout the course of the fellowship. And the theme of the fellowship is reimagining justice through abolition. It will specifically support Black, Indigenous, Latinx, Asian, and other artists of color across the Asian and African diaspora. And it focuses on criminal justice reform through the use of narrative storytelling and artistry. And it is grounded in the 8 to Abolition framework. If you are looking for some kind of inspiration as to what part of abolition you can include in your project, or you just need some ideas, you're trying to see what the fellowship is kind of rooted in, I can also drop the link to that in the chat because I think that's super helpful. And I think, yes, Drea put the application in the chat. So I encourage everyone to apply. I think that it's a really great opportunity to work with your own, a project of your choice, and work along TOC at the same time. Yes.
And can I just add one thing, Nina?
Yes.
If you are here and you are not BIPOC, one of the things about like relinquishing space and creating access is going through your Rolodex and putting people on if you are a non-Black or brown person and whose work you admire and respect and love. It's an opportunity to create access for marginalized communities who are usually at the bottom of the list for resources like these. And so if you are a person who does not qualify for this fellowship, it doesn't mean that you don't have a role. As a matter of fact, your role would be a builder or a weaver. And so finding those organizations or those artivists in your network to pass this opportunity to keeps you engaged in the work in a very important way. And so if this is, you know, reminding you of anybody in your network who would be great for this opportunity, please, 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 please post to your social media or shout us out for this Artivism Fellowship so that those people will receive the access and the space that they deserve and have deserved for centuries. And so we'd appreciate your help and your support around this effort. That's all I want to say. It's kind of like church where it's like bring a visitor or tell a friend. So bring a visitor to our applications who qualifies.
I second that. Thanks.
Thanks, Drea and Nina. I'm gonna leave y'all both up here. And folks, I just want to make it very clear that we're talking about two different things here. There's the Theater of Change course, which is the 14-week course that meets on Monday nights, where you're learning this methodology, where you're in class with law students, with directly impacted people. This is an opportunity available to anyone who identifies as an artist in New York City. There is separately the Artivism Fellowship, which if you're thinking about it, it's like, these are people who have a specific project in mind that want support. This is geared specifically for Black, Indigenous, Latinx, people of color, Asian American folks. All that is the Artivism Fellowship. This is the Theater of Change course. We're promoting both because we want y'all to plug in the place that suits you best. We're now going to open it for questions, and you're welcome to ask about either program. You can hop on mic, you can throw a question in the chat, whatever works for you.
Can I add something really quickly?
Yes.
I also want to say that if you have an idea for a project, but you don't know all of the details, because that can be really daunting when applying. If you don't know all the ins and outs of how you're going to accomplish it, I still encourage you to apply, because I think that's what the fellowship is for. I know sometimes I won't, because I'm like, I don't know exactly how I want to do this or what's happening next. All I have is a seed, but seeds are important. And that's what I find that BAC does, is like support these seeds. So yes.
Thanks, Nina. I'm going to read out a question in the chat just for folks who are watching this afterward as a recording. But there was a question that for other artists of color, does that include people of color who are Arab American or from the Middle East, North African region? And the answer is absolutely yes. And you are welcome to apply to the Artivism Fellowship. Other questions? If there aren't questions. Yeah, Diana, go ahead.
Hey, y'all. So glad to be here. Thank you. I threw in the chat that I was really lucky to be able to participate a couple years back, like at the J term in 2020, right before the world shut down. If you've already participated, is it sort of smarter to step back and be like, you know what, I did it. It's great. Let's let others do it. Or is it like, hey, I'm there's a lot more to learn. I would love to do it again, but also just would love to know what you think of how that works.
Anybody want to take that? I say, Diana, I was in your group actually. We had a great group. I'd say apply, and the priority is usually given to newcomers. And if we find that there is space for people who have done the program before, we will certainly allot that space to you, but we're trying to, provide a little equal opportunity to see new faces. And also, I would also encourage you to just send over an email to BAC to say, hey, I took this course before and I'm really interested in how to remain in this community, because there are other ways to be a part of the theater of change without being a participant, especially if you've been in it before. It's certainly not a like, you tell us what you want to do and you absolutely have the job, but like, it's always really nice to know who wants to be in our community, as there are tons of opportunities that come up to do so. So I would send an email to our info@bwayadvocacycoalition.org so that you don't so that you get a prompt response, and we'll put you on our Airtable. So we'll say, Diana has taken this course before, and it just flag you as somebody who's interested in being a part of the community. But please apply. And we have a very transparent selection process, which is, I think, another favorite thing is like, we keep people updated of where their applications are, and we'll just say like, Diana, there was a space, or Diana, keep applying, here's another opportunity, etc. I'm saying the same thing different ways, but I think you got it. Yeah.
Cool, thanks. It's good to see you again. I feel like 2020 January was like 3 million years ago.
No,
So
truly, it's good to see you. Hope you're well.
You too.
Great. Okay, so there's a couple questions in the chat. First says, what is the compensation for Theater of Change? So because Theater of Change is a course rather than a fellowship, there's no like project grant for it, but participants are compensated for participating. So you're paid to attend class. Our stipend last year was $1,000 for the course. We are always in favor of increasing that whenever we can. That number has not been absolutely set for this year, but rest assured it would not be below that. There was another question in the chat. Is there a virtual option for the Theater of Change course or no? So this year we are doing a strictly in-person course. We've found last year just that some of the relationship building aspects were really hard to achieve virtually. We may have options like if someone's sick or if you need to miss a week away to participate virtually, but we are selecting applications largely on folks' ability to be able to generally attend in person. Of course. Great. COVID policy, absolutely. So our COVID policy, since we'll be meeting in person, is actually we adhere to Columbia University's COVID policy. So that means that we are masked the entire time that we are inside. Folks have to complete a certification, kind of like a, yes, I'm feeling good today, when you come in. And then at present, vaccinations are not mandatory. That, just to keep it brief, Columbia's policy might change before next semester. So we will keep everyone updated, but at present, required masking and COVID like attestations when you come in. I'm also going to double check on that and make sure it hasn't already changed. And then I'll put that on the website because that seems like a good thing for folks to know. Any other questions? Thank you. Yeah, thank you all for your time. I'm happy to stick around and ask people what they're having for dinner. Because or Drea also has an amazing recipe for mac and cheese. Maybe I'll just have her run that back for everybody so you can get ready for your festivities if you're celebrating this weekend. Yes. Nina, what are you putting on your spaghetti?
Peppers, onions, and possible meat. The 3 cheese sauce.
That's you if you don't eat meat. She gives me shit on this all the time. I know. There's another question in the chat that, thanks for helping me stall, Nina. How is care and resources given for the work that's created by BIPOC students? I wonder if you could, well, if anyone wants to jump in on that, go ahead, but could you clarify the question for me a little bit? I want to make sure that I actually answer it. So like how, in the course, how do we?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I kind of like, this is something that like, I think I'm like exploring even in school itself. But I think that like from creating pieces of work that, you know, we're telling our stories, and again, we mentioned this aspect of like, you know, how vulnerable it is and how like heavy it can feel, to bring those stories into the space. So while we can create that light, smiley and environment, how are like what resources like is given to those students, and like, because we need people that like also like can relate to those experiences in a sense where like you know, they're able to not just like, oh, like bring it into the space and then it's like left untouched or you know, not acknowledged, because I feel like that has happened, like that happens a lot. And it's like, okay, yeah, I hear you, you know, what you said was so powerful, and then that's it. It's like there's no care given for that person to like, okay, now how do I sit with this for myself? And I think that's like you know, that goes back to like how we can heal as artists as well. But just to like, you know, we want to be cautious of what we bring to the space, but like not sugarcoat our experiences, you know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Lucky. Thank you for, you know, putting that into the ether, into the atmosphere. So one of the things that I would like to share is that we do an in-depth orientation and training in which we want to make sure that all of our facilitators are working in trauma-informed ways. And so that we're not producing pieces that are trauma porn and trauma, you know, extractive, and producing work in community that feels regenerative and not degenerative, especially because a lot of these stories are coming from people who are formerly incarcerated. And so just a pat on the back and a thank you so much, that was beautiful, is not enough. And so one of our practices, our active practices, is when we invite stories into the space, one of the first things that we say is that we want to talk about things in which you've healed from and that aren't going to spark trauma in the moment, which may, you know, in some spaces may not be the stories, especially if you come from a conservatory background, that people are necessarily wanting to hear. They want to poke the bear. They want to make you cry. They want to stir some shit. And we're not interested, or we're really actively practicing. I don't want to speak also in a way that is BAC like pedestalizing the way that we do, as we're actively learning and we believe in failing forward. And so, but one of the ways is we want folks to speak about things that they've healed from and that are not going to re-trigger them in spaces. Two is we had an on-site doula or ombudsman, is that what it's called? Ombudsman. Just a person that like, if shit did hit the fan or if something was stirred up, that they could talk to. I was one of those people in which that could be called on at any time to hold space for a person. We also have a very close therapist connect with Chantel Brown, who is a licensed social worker. And so we have a couple of people in our arsenal, in our Rolodex, who can hold space with formal degrees, but also there are people in our community who can hold space who are just innately positioned to do so. Another way in which we, you know, honor the stories, particularly of those who are marginalized, is by opening and closing the space. And so there'll be like a community check-in before, and there is a wrap up afterwards, whether it's a community breath or just sitting with the moment, as we want to make sure we're prioritizing people over profit. And there was one more way. I just wanted to give some examples of the ways in which we put that into practice and not just give you some vague answer of like, oh, that's, you know, a priority of ours without any kind of receipts in a way. Also, yeah, I think the stories that are anchored are coming from a place. Oh, I already said that one. That was the first one. So those are a couple of examples. Aaliyah, sounds like you have another one too.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think you actually kind of started to say this, and maybe this is what fell out of your head, or maybe not. I don't know. But we have a practice called the outer space,
Yes.
where and was that what you were gonna say? You,
No, I was just saying yes, like
oh, okay. I didn't want to step on your toes. Yeah. So basically, this is a like half an hour-ish space after the course is done, where if you want to stick around and decompress and talk about what it brought up for you that day, we always have that space set aside, and so that's both a functional space where you actually can like think about and process things. You're not like walking the subway alone being like, oof, that was tough, but also just an acknowledgement of the fact that like what the course brings up for you, or what your feelings, what your experience brings up for you, doesn't like just end when we're like, okay, the bell rang, we're done. And so we really just, through that, attempt to acknowledge like this is something that is going to exist back in your life, and you may need a way to transition it in and out. And we're always open to new ideas. So lucky if you've been in a space and you're like, damn, that worked so well, and like people really caring for me, let us know, because we are constantly looking for ways to integrate more of those opportunities and resources and care. And thank you for the question.
Leah, I would love to jump in as well too. I think for me, a thing I really appreciate is, I think with BAC, and especially Theater Change, there was always like a willingness to listen to the space and see what is needed, and like really getting ourselves away from this idea of like creating a product versus like we're really invested in building community right now. If the product comes, that's great, but it's more of like, how do we invest it in each other? And like that willingness to like listen to the space, see what's needed, and if we need to sit with this for just a little bit longer and like veto our idea, like go in a different direction, then that's what's needed. And I really appreciate that. And I just wanted to say that as a person who's been in this space a couple of times and like definitely seen that, and also like thinking with my own experience with my group in Theater of Change, and with Drea and Alejo, like really guiding conversations that were very heavy conversations to sit with, and also like realizing, is this the conversation? Is this the story that we want to lean into, versus because if it's causing like harm to someone in telling the story, then that's not what we need at all. And so it's that willingness to be like very just that deep listening and very introspective, and knowing if this is needed or not is super key here. Just want to offer that.
Thanks, Drew. Y'all make me so happy. I'm so proud to work with you. Is there any other info? Oh, for folks who are watching this as a recording, just a reminder that you can always email info, I-N-F-O, at bwayadvocacycoalition.org with any questions. You can also go to bwayadvocacycoalition.com for information on both the Artisan Fellowship and the Theater of Change course, both of which are starting in January. So applications are due in the next few weeks. Thank you for your time. Reach out to us, follow us on Instagram. We hope to see you all around. Yeah, that's all I got. Anybody else? I hope everyone has some good food tonight. Thanks, y'all. Good night, everyone.
See y'all.